MLS Aces Podcast. This is your host, Tom Sweezy, and we're here with another one of our team previews heading into the 2023 MLS season, which is only 25 days away at this point. We're recording on February 1st. I just say that in case any signings happen after or players after this date. You know, we couldn't have talked about it. But I say we because I have joining me Ted Meyer, host of the United 96 podcast and the Kindred Spirits podcast, all part of the RFK Refugees Podcasting Network. We're talking DC United. If you guys don't know what RFK is, then you're maybe too young for this podcast at this point. But we're talking DC United. Ted, thank you so much for coming on, taking some time, and talking one of the original clubs.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me on. I did a similar thing. I don't know if you remember around the league. I did a similar thing trying to preview all the teams, and that time there was only 20. So you have my sympathies for the amount of teams you're trying to cram into to a preview. So
you know, the hardest thing is keeping the episodes relatively, you know, like the conversation's relatively short, and I'm not helping that by adding this right now, but keeping the conversations relatively short so that I can pair 3 teams in an episode and getting people's schedules down. But other than that, it's easy to talk MLS. But
yeah, fair enough.
let's talk a little DC United. Last year, I'm going to say not anywhere close to what the best year in DC United history was, finishing dead last in the East, dead last in Major League Soccer, wooden spoon winners on 27 points. It is what it is, and we're going to move on to 2023 because there's a lot of excitement, I feel, coming in with 2023, right? You have Wayne Rooney leading the charge. You have some of maybe the older faces, older names out, the Bill Hamids, the Brad Smiths, Ola Kamaras, and a lot of other depth pieces that I'm not gonna read off every single name, but a ton of other more names. But coming in, right, you have new goalkeeping options, you have new fullback talent, new stars in the midfield, new DPs. This is an exciting time to be a DC United fan. So Ted, we'll just kind of start high level about the offseason. How have you felt it's gone with Wayne Rooney and what this front office has done?
Well, you know, clearly the idea this offseason was we need to be better. We need to be better than last year. And I think the team has accomplished that in a certain realm. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that this all collapses and we finish wooden back-to-back wooden spoons. Actually, I mean, I think with this team, I feel like I'm not entering this year thinking that we are going to set the world on fire or that we are going to suddenly go from worst to first.
Yeah.
I think we'll be competitive. I think at the very least, Wayne Rooney appears to be trying to build a more sustainable model than what appeared under Hernan Losada. Hernan Losada was tons of fun. 2021 was probably, I would say, of the non-playoff seasons, it was probably the most fun I'd had watching the team in a long time, and that's coming from years and years of Ben Olsen, okay, who did his best with what he had. But let's be clear, games were not always appetizing to watch. But it's very clear that it very much burnt out certain players. There were obvious issues with a young coach trying to think he knew everything. We've all been young and think that we know everything, and I think he got a heavy dose of reality. And I hope Hernan's back in Montreal. I hope he's at least learned something, because from what was described from Chris Seitz and others. But speaking to this year, it seems like Wayne Rooney's trying to build a more sustainable model. I don't really know what this team is going to look like. I sort of have gone in my head that this team is going to be in a 4-3-3, that they're going to play Taxi as sort of an inverted inside forward. They're going to, kind of cut in all their wingers and, allow their wing backs. And then, Matthias Klick kind of maybe being that guy who's going to shuttle the ball from, the midfield to the attack. But, he's come out in a 4-4-2 in all his preseason games. Again, injuries are a continual story with DC. They appear to be again this year. He played this preseason game for what we call the starting lineup. He had Andy Nahar and Akamboli. I think I got that right. Who's a 16-year-old at center back. So, not injuries that continue to be an issue. Birnbaum, you have Paulson, you have Brendan Hines-Ike, and you have Derek Williams all out with injury. So hopefully this is, a clearing storm that eventually everybody's going to come back fit and ready to play, but certainly concerning. I don't really know. I think playoffs are achievable this year.
I would agree.
It's a weird feeling because, normally you think after a wooden spoon, you clear house front office, you clear house on the coaching ranks, and then you get a guy, okay, now we need to rebuild this club, for the next 3 years. And this is not the case. This is a team that is brought Wayne Rooney. He's only guaranteed, and I use guaranteed in very heavy emphasis in quotations because honestly, I wasn't really worried about him. There were talks about him going to Everton. I wasn't really worried because when you look at it and you kind of look at what Wayne Rooney has sort of done, it seemed a little silly to me to go to Everton and suddenly be thrust into a team that's in a relegation battle. I'm not necessarily worried about him leaving now. I am a little concerned, what happens in the summer.
Yeah.
If things are really flying off the rails, if it's going really well, exceeding expectations, or going really bad, I could see a scenario where a team comes in and he says, look, I've had success here. I've done, let me pass this on to a caretaker. He can see this out the rest of the year. I've built the structure. I've built everything, and, kind of do what Ronnie Dial has done, what Patrick Vieira has done. So we'll see. I think there's still a good chance he sees out the year, but then it's he's only guaranteed for that year. There is a club option. So it's a weird sort of year for this team because there doesn't appear to be any long-term thought, even though there is maybe a plan somewhere, it doesn't appear to be there. So we'll see. It's going to be a more interesting season for DC.
It feels like for a team that just finished Wooden Spoon is in win now mode, and it's very odd because it's not something you typically see. It does feel like DC United should win a trophy this next season, whether it's the Open Cup, whether it's the Supporter Shield, whether it's MLS Cup. I doubt the last two, no offense, but whether it's something
none taken.
I feel like DC is set up to take home some silverware somewhere in the 2023 calendar year. But let's kind of look at this, right? Because there have been a lot of new additions. Wayne Rooney, did make his comments last year about some of the efforts and talent level of players, and I think he's got rid of those guys, and I think he's brought in the guys that he's wanted. So in net, two new additions of a Tyler Miller and an Alex Bono, two guys who have been, I'll say MLS veterans at this point. Tyler Miller, I feel like for years has been rumored as, the best backup, some guy who should be starting somewhere, but he's just not. To me, it looks like it's going to be Tyler Miller as a starting keeper, but am I reading this wrong?
So they're saying it's going to be a competition between Bono, I can't even think of it. I can't even pronounce his name right now. Zumildo. I'm so bad at. I can't believe my brain is mush at this point after work. Luis, I know, is his first name. He's shown really well for Loudon, and apparently Wayne has talked him up a little bit. And then, of course, there's Alex Bono, who we got from Toronto. So him along with Tyler Miller, apparently there is a bit of a battle. I would expect Tyler Miller to come out on top. Again, we don't have any video of any preseason matches, but Alex Bono did give up 3 goals, to Charlotte. A couple of them looked like near posts, one through the legs. So not exactly maybe a strong showing, but apparently he had an assist to Christian Benteke where he played the ball over the top. So we'll see who starts in goal. I expect Tyler Miller to start, but I wouldn't be surprised if there may be some surprises here. I think we're due for, considering the amount of goalkeepers that were sort of under Bill Hamid that we kind of passed on to the rest of the league and had them become superstars. I think we're ready to maybe have a little bit of that luck maybe come back to us a little bit.
Look, there's also a lot of competitions, right? Leagues Cup, MLS regular season play, Open Cup. You got a lot of stuff going on. Minutes can go around to a bunch of these guys. So I'm excited to see who wins that out. Again, my prediction's Tyler Miller, but we'll see. Alex Bono is not a slack in his own right. And then obviously now if this young keeper Zamudio's coming into the scene too, we'll keep our eyes on that. Let's look at the new fullbacks though. Juan coming in, again, this is all assumptions on my behalf, coming in as the assumed right back option. Mohamed Jaizi. Jaez. I butcher names. So
He says it's easier, just call me Mo. So we're just gonna call him Mo for the rest of the year. So.
We're going Mo at left back, and then obviously Pedro Santos was another guy brought in. I'm assuming in a perfect world where everyone's healthy, Andy Nahar is gonna be a right back, maybe a right center back, and some options. But how do you feel about maybe the upgrades at fullback heading into 2023?
To be honest, I like them. I comparatively to who we had on this team, in a certain Julian Gressel, I'm maybe a little bit disappointed. I
understand.
I have some seriously upset flashbacks at that January camp assist that he had, and I'm like, boy, man, DC should sign this guy. They need a guy to send the ball to Christian Benteke.
Imagine him setting up Benteke. That'd be great.
What's that now? But anyway, yeah, I think Ruan will be a solid pick.
Yeah.
I think the most important thing is Andy Nahar is 28, 29, so he should be in his prime, but he has dealt with so many injuries, and he is not a player, incredibly talented on the right side. He won't right now. It looks like Wayne Rooney is going with a 4-back line, not a 3-back line. Really, only Andy Nahar at center back really only worked in kind of that 3-back line because it sort of gave him the space to kind of push forward. So it's not out of the question that, he can play it. So in a desperation situation, maybe, but that's not really where he plays sort of in a 4-man back line. So I expect him to play at that sort of right wing back position. He could also move up further up the field to right wing. He's still an incredibly skilled and talented player. I think they've got sort of two guys in both Pedro Santos and Andy Nahar that can sort of play any position up that right and left side. And depth is a concern for this team. So I think it's honestly maybe a solid bet to have two guys that can sort of do that can sort of play both those roles. Mo, I'm intrigued by Mo. I've watched some of the sizzle reel. I've looked at, some of the deep analytics of this guy. He seems like he can be a pretty effective left back in MLS. We had Brad Smith, obviously last year, who was sort of supposed to be the Kevin Paredes assistant, who we sold to Wolfsburg. Wolfsburg. Brad Smith, not a guy who could really beat you on the dribble. He was kind of going to be a direct run the ball type guy. So he didn't quite sort of match what Kevin Paredes brought at that position. And I think Mo maybe is a little bit more, obviously younger, maybe a little bit more of a return to that, can sort of play that sort of quick 1-2 pass, can maybe make that dribble, beat a guy on the dribble that really we just never really got from Brad Smith. So I'm intrigued by him. I think of the signings, I think he's maybe a bit of a sleeper of a guy who could come in here, really make an impact. I'm not calling for newcomer of the year from him, but I think he could surprise a couple of people.
All right. Well, you mentioned the rest of the defense before, mainly those center backs, right? Of Steve Birnbaum, Derek Williams, who are out hurt right now. So is Brendan Hines-Ike, and we're going to see options at Andy Nahar at center back, Matai Akamboni. Again, apologies, Matai. I'm going to butcher your name.
You got Akamboni, I think is the correct term. I think you got it there.
Flowing with it. Donovan Pines, Hayden Sargis, Jacob Green, right? There's options at the rest of that back line. A lot of youth, but we'll see who can step up in the time being with those injuries. Let's jump into the attack a little bit, because the biggest name I would argue on this roster is Christian Benteke, a guy who was brought in last year, a guy who was brought in to be the dude, the DP9. And I think he has every ability, every chance to do that in 2023. I think he has a chance to score a ton of goals in 2023. Pair him with the guy up top like a Taxi Fountas, who has proven to be an elite attacking option in Major League Soccer. That has to be at least somewhat exciting for a team that you're not feeling super hot on right now.
Yeah, so I think that's sort of the one thing last year we never really got to see for reasons maybe we can touch on a bit with Taxi and Benteke, and I think that was something we were all kind of looking forward to, and then it kind of turned really south and really sour very quickly,
very fast.
But Taxi's back. I guess it is what it is. It's hard as a DC fan, as someone who hears something like this, and be honest, I was like, okay, I think he needs to be gone. Obviously the investigation came out the way it did. It's kind of, I think the team is moving on. His teammates don't seem any sort of friction there. Of course, it's hard to really know.
Yeah.
But he's back. Skill wise, I agree. I think he is a fantastic talent. I think he showed that he could be a very much an elite forward in this league, and we'll see. I think he will do sort of what Christian Benteke needs. Christian Benteke is not going to be a guy who's going to be a high energy forward who's going to run or try to break up plays, create quick counters, quick passes. Taxi will do that. Taxi will move around the field. He'll make those quick passes. He'll find those seams. He likes to shoot, but I think he can also play as a little bit of a setup man to Christian Benteke. And I think that the key to success with Benteke is if Benteke is getting the ball, between the 6 and between the 18 arch and the midfield line consistently, we're in trouble. If he is able to be without the ball to make that sort of darting run, to use his incredible physical traits to get ahead, get a one-time finish on the ball, then I think we're in business. It was definitely a weird season for him here. I think all the fans are kind of like, we'll give a pass. It was a weird year. It was a bad year. Now is okay. Now you've settled. You've got a full preseason with the team. Now it's time to show us, why you're essentially our most expensive player in team history. So I'm positive. I'm hopeful that he can be better. And it's like one of those things. There's a lot of betting on this team. Yes, they went out and signed Matthias Klick. There's a lot of betting amongst a lot of the players that they brought in. Chris Durkin, Ravel Morrison, who knows if he'll make it to the lineup. He's been looking for the way out for the better part of the offseason, it sounds like, and still hasn't quite found that yet. So if I were a betting man, I would say a good bet would be he would, find another team and be gone, but he might be there for opening day. A lot of this is betting on guys that we signed last year that we saw maybe some glimpses or a little bit, but maybe not a whole lot, that they can really sort of make a next step with sort of a full preseason. So we'll wait and see.
I mean, look, I think you're 100% kind of hitting the nail on the head with a lot of that, with the attack. And for anyone who's listening or watching who doesn't really understand what we're saying about Taxi Fountas, just do some Googling on your own. And all I can personally say is, you hope people can change and grow in life. I guess that's all I can really, leave it at there, and be good to everyone else. Be good to other human beings out there. That's what I will leave it at. The midfield really quick, and we'll finish things up here, Ted, with the midfield. Obviously, you touched on the Ravel Morrison situation. Most likely we'll see an exit sooner rather than later, or maybe a summer exit. There's a lot of question marks around what his on-field, off-field attendance is going to be like for DC United. But let's talk about the guys who are going to be there, right? You talked about Matthias Klick, Victor Paulsen, another one of those big-name moves last year. Chris Durkin, Russell Knaus is still on this team, and to be honest, I did forget about Russell Knaus a little bit until I started doing my homemade depth charts here. But do you feel like Klick maybe pairing with a guy like Paulsen or Durkin, because Durkin did, I think, show out pretty well last year, in his return to DC. Do you feel like they could be the nice piece to connect some new faces in the defense and obviously the elite attacking talent that you guys have?
Yeah, I mean, I think what's sort of been missing, if you look back on how bad 2022 was, the lack of somebody in the midfield, I think, to provide that sort of, maybe that pass, that link, and sort of, and also to be a little bit, of a pest. So from what we've seen from Matthias Klick, character wise, it sounds like he's fantastic, beloved at Leeds, beloved by his teammates. So I think I'm really excited to see that type of player in here. He sounds like he plays either sort of an 8-10 hybrid box to box guy. Yeah. I don't think we're going to expect this guy to come in and be Hani Mukhtar. I think that's a little bit of an unrealistic expectation. But if he can be a guy who can sort of, develop a connection, if we can create, a spine of Klick, Fountas, and Benteke, and have those guys be in sync, they know the moves, they know where they're going to be, and I think it could be a pretty effective spine for DC. And I think that's what he's sort of been brought in here to do, to sort of be that guy in the midfield to give us a little bit more of an attacking push, because, Victor Paulsen, very defensive minded. Knaus has some of those abilities in, spurts, like he can make a type of pass. When he kind of came here, we kind of thought, oh, he's maybe a slight improvement on Perry Kitchen, but Perry Kitchen could only really pass sideways and backwards, and that was about it. And Knaus does have an ability to get forward, to make a forward or progressive pass. Chris Durkin also, maybe a little more defensive minded, still maybe a little bit more of a two-way player. Click definitely brings that. And, again, the Ravel Morrison is still there, and he also certainly has that ability. I think it's a motivation issue for him. So I think we'll get more sense of like what this team is when they're healthy, and then we see maybe how Click might influence how the team lines up. Because if you're talking about designated players, like all three are definitely going to play. You can't have a designated player off the bench. Yeah. So I think Click might maybe force some changes to the team. We've seen them play kind of an empty bucket, 4-4-2 in the past couple preseason games. I'm wondering kind of how that formation switches once Click's in there.
Obviously, once injuries are taken care of as well, maybe that's shifting the starting 11, the lineup, the formation, whatever that may look like as well. Ted, I'll go ahead, plug your stuff, plug the podcast, the network, enjoy, and seriously, thank you for coming on Talk Some DC with me.
Yeah, absolutely. So we John Hoffman and I, who've both been longtime DC United fans, we record a live show every Monday where we talk over at twitch.tv/RFPRefugees. That live show is then broken in two, and then we put the United 96 show, which is every Tuesday, and then of course we do the Kindred Spirits show every Thursday. If you want access to both shows, you get it on our private Patreon feed. We put both shows up there. So yeah, definitely check us out. Again, live shows every Monday. Come in, join us at the fun time. We got some stuff planned for the season as well. I think it's for what we're going to do as far as, with the whole Apple TV deal, things definitely have changed. So.
All right. Awesome. Now, Ted, seriously, thank you so much. The expert around DC United, and we'll stay connected this season.
All right. Thanks.
MLS Aces Podcast. This is your host, Tom Sweezy, and we're doing another one of these team previews heading into the 2023 season. Right now, we're talking the new kids on the block. We're talking St. Louis City SC. And who else would I want to have other than Phill Grooms from Flyover Footy? Phill, it's been a long time. I'm happy to talk to you again. And let's talk your new boys.
Yeah, man. I think last time we talked was probably about USL stuff, but now St. Louis is taking the step up, finally. So this is exciting.
I mean, I do maybe want to preface it for people who aren't familiar with St. Louis soccer. Like, soccer has been a big deal in the city of St. Louis and the St. Louis area for a very long time. I don't know if you want to speak on that really quickly. I didn't really think about that before right now, but there probably are people who aren't familiar with the St. Louis soccer scene.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a St. Louis in every World Cup team, like since forever, basically. What is it in I don't know it well enough, like details, but like in the 50s, there was that World Cup game that we beat England, and there were like 6 St. Louisans on that team, Italian Americans. It's St. Louis has had soccer since the 1800s, and so World Open Cup legends, really, in a lot of ways. So it's like between us and maybe Bethlehem Steel as far as like the most championships, and as far as us in Pittsburgh as far as the most championships in Open Cups history. So there's a lot going on here. I just did not do it justice, but there is a reason we're saying some of the silly things you're hearing out of St. Louis about being a soccer city.
No, exactly, right. And if we want to look modern day, like a Josh Sargent is a kid who's come out of the St. Louis Soccer City area. I'm completely blanking on Tim Ream again, another St. Louis. A St. Louis guy playing in the world stage of the Premier League. So St. Louis City, or St. Louis in general, has a big soccer scene, and St. Louis City is just the newest version of that now on the MLS level. And obviously, when I've been opening up these conversations, I've been talking about 2022, and I've been talking about kind of how the rosters changed in the offseason. The rosters changed because it's everyone new, brand new, coming in. Yeah. Let's talk kind of the front office's approach, because we haven't seen this in a little bit. I feel like the front office is going very heavy into the European market to find players to come in and build out the roster year one. Obviously, we've heard the comments about, the idea on the DP rule as well. The front office would rather build a team rather than maybe relying on 1, 2, 3 specific players. So could you be able to speak to a little bit of, I guess, the roster build right now and where the front office and Bradley Cardinal is kind of taking this?
Yeah, and I think a lot of it centers around Lutz Pfannenstiel, who's the German sporting director, former Hoffenheim system, as well as he was the sporting director of Dusseldorf as well for a year. And he came over and is just like built from scratch. He's doing everything right as far as the culture is concerned. We're all very, very happy about that. And, this may be a slow year, but what he is doing is, he was a former scout. So yes, he is a little bit heavy as far as the European market. And I have to publicly apologize to Charlotte fans because I was making fun of them for this, but we've already purchased a few international slots. And so for better or for worse, we'll see, a lot of this really hinges on how good a scout he is. And so if he's really good and he's getting stuff that are going to hit heavier than their weight, or the system pushes them heavier than their weight, we'll do okay this year. But, if not, we may be in trouble. We'll see how it goes.
Well, let's start with, I guess, the managerial side of things, right? Bradley Cardinal, a guy who was born and raised in the Red Bull system, that pressing system. I'm assuming the answer is yes, but is this something that we should be expecting year one for St. Louis City? Just kind of that energy drink football?
Absolutely. And the MLS Next Pro team, it was City 2 played last year, very much that. But he's been pretty strongly saying that this isn't just like a Red Bull system. This isn't just energy drink soccer. Like it is, but it isn't. It's good. He's the only thing he's been like comfortable comparing it to is the way that Hoffenheim plays. And I haven't figured out exactly what the details are in that, but it's not just going to be get the ball, send it forward the first opportunity you can and just hope for the best. No, it's got a little more nuance to it, we hope, as far as I'm not sure what those nuances are. But yes, pressing the hell out of you in the entire game is definitely something that's going to be happening with certain triggers and things like that. So yeah, fitness and getting a lot of athletic players that might be able to punch above their weight, like athleticism and a high pressing system. Those two things go together very nicely. And if you can use your depth, it goes together even more nicely.
You mentioned one thing in there that I definitely feel like I should note for the people watching or listening is St. Louis City 2. Obviously, this is a very rare case where we've had an MLS Next Pro first season. We had a team who was coming into MLS put out a 2 team before they put out the first team. And year one was pretty successful, right? You're going to an MLS Next Pro Cup final. I think it's in the Cup final. I'm not exactly sure the specific title there, but you guys went to the final against Crew 2, ultimately lost. But I mean, a very successful season for St. Louis City too. And obviously a lot of those guys, getting the trust, being able to get those first team contracts heading into the 2023 season, a Kyle Hybert, a Josh Yarrow, a Keel Watts, shout out USL again. I mean, a lot of these guys are, were rewarded for a very good year. Is there any more, I guess, of that? I don't know, maybe that wasn't correct wording. I'll go with the better wording of, is this more of like a culture build? Like they built the culture year one with St. Louis City 2. Now they want to make sure the guys who were there and who did it well and did it quote unquote correctly are bringing that to the first team as well?
Yes. And I do think that the system really is important because they had a bit of a slow start. And I think a lot of that was that they just didn't get their feet under them. And I think they've been able to notice that. In fact, early in the season, we noticed the academy, who had months longer than the 2 team, could come in and look in the preseason, especially they looked like they knew what they were doing more than the pro players in the 2 team in the initial stages. So there's a clear difference between knowing the system and not knowing the system. Even our DP striker who played with the 2 team had a rough first game. And then you could tell he got better as the season went on as far as the pressing season system. So yes, massive. It's so important for us to get that figured out. And I do think if we start slow, that will be one reason for sure that these guys haven't been together long, and it's going to take a little bit for that to sink in.
Well, let's start off, I think, when we're looking at the specific roster, I think let's talk about the guys that maybe MLS fans out there do know already. Tim Parker, I think, leading that list. And obviously there's been an injury already to the back line, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But Tim Parker, a John Bell, great 2 guys who have been, playing at a high level across Major League Soccer. You bring also in that back line a John Nelson and a Jake Nervinsky. I mean, year one, you're bringing a lot of MLS depth, a lot of MLS experience and talent to this defense.
Yeah, in fact, we were hoping for more of that, to be honest with you, but those names are very important to us, and it was a bit of a relief to bring in guys that had gotten some experience. You know, in the expansion draft, we got Vasilev and Gioacchini, who don't have much MLS experience, even though we got them through the MLS expansion draft. So it is interesting, but, you know, Tim Parker's been massive in preseason already. We can tell, like, such a good leader, a good locker room guy. And been a great player as well. So I'm sure we'll be leaning on him and John Bell. You know, New England was not happy to lose him, I heard. So that was one we were very excited about. I don't know if you saw, like, the fan talking into his phone after he got drafted, almost crying about it. So that made us feel good.
I mean, look, John Bell was one of those pieces that I feel like New England was kind of banking on for the next few years. But unfortunately, it's MLS expansion. You have protected players lists, and it's what happens, right? And John Bell was definitely one that I was like, okay, like St. Louis should get this guy, because like he's starter quality. And if he's not, he's that third center back that, you know, you want on your roster. So definitely a fan of St. Louis grabbing him, right? And you mentioned a few other names there. MLS experience, not a ton, but some MLS experience of an Indiana Vasilev, who you guys officially, you know, got the deal across for to bring over full time. Nicholas Gioacchini, a Jared Stroud as well. You know, right, guys who we're familiar with a little bit. Gioacchini maybe a little bit more because of his time with the USMNT last summer and everything like that. So a lot of 2 summers ago, but a lot of positives, I think, as far as that. Now, there is also a lot of names that we don't know. One name that's not familiar maybe to MLS fandom, but familiar to the world football stage is a Roman Berkey in net, right? A dude who has been the goalkeeper for Borussia Dortmund and, you know, one of the best goalkeepers in the world at one point in his career. When you saw the news, or now that you're seeing him kind of in St. Louis training and everything like that, like, to me, that would blow my mind, kind of just seeing Roman Berkey like on your roster. But what's your take on Roman Berkey as the goalkeeper for this club?
I mean, we're excited, and, you know, he's a goalkeeper chosen by a goalkeeper, right? So Lutz Pfannenstiel was a goalkeeper as a professional. Side note, played on 6 continents professionally, so that's a fun fact for you. But yeah, I mean, it was great, and I was shocked that, you know, I got to talk to him the first time he was in training, and there was a media day. Like, they sent him, and it was just like, wow. I mean, he's a great guy. And it's going to be massive in a lot of ways. I think something that he and our DP striker said early on were, you know, these guys need to learn that it's not just training and go home, you know, like, so he's going to be a massive captain, Berkey will. But, you know, the big debate is, do you pay that much for a goalkeeper? Does it pay off? And most people are saying no in the past because it hasn't worked out. So it was a worry of ours. But then you got Ernst Tanner saying something like, goalkeeper for the money will have the biggest effect on, you know, goals at the end of the season. There's a stat name for it. I forgot what it is, but he statistically thinks that it's a good idea to spend on a goalkeeper, or at least to get a quality goalkeeper. Obviously, Andre Blake has a big part in their success in Philadelphia. And so there's that. There's also, I think Vancouver's looking at spending $1 million for a goalkeeper. So that's interesting too. But it's not settled by any means. I'm just, you know, shilling for my team right now. I love seeing him. He's an incredible goalkeeper. Plus on saves. Plus on nailing the right back or just anywhere on the field. He can pass it out of the back. He's been incredible to watch. Just like mind blowing having a guy like that in the United States.
I mean, look, I'm not the biggest proponent of spending that much money on a goalkeeper. I will openly admit that. It's worked in the past. It's currently working with a few names. If Roman Berkey can play up to the level of an Andre Blake or maybe a Tim Howard in the past, when Howard was with Colorado for those few years, you know, maybe we get it, and I'm biting, you know, and I'm eating my words at the end of the season. Maybe, and I'm okay with it, because I am excited about the idea of Roman Berkey starting and playing in an MLS game. Let's continue on with some of these other guys who we may not be super familiar with. You've mentioned the DP striker a few times, Joao Klaus. Tell me about what this guy can bring. I think the biggest thing when it comes down to a DP striker is at the end of the day, you need this guy to bag goals, right? You're paying him a lot of money. You need to make sure he is your prime goal scoring option. Do you think that Klaus, once adjusted, because we've also seen that as well, some adjustment difficulties at times for foreign players coming over. Do you feel like Klaus could be that big time DP goal scoring option that we've seen for other clubs around MLS?
Couple things about that. I guess to temper expectations, part of the quote you've heard from Lutz is the designated team quote, right? And it's easy to make fun of. But I think the first time we saw something like that was kind of like tempering expectations about Klaus, in that he said, I think it's more to temper expectations in that Klaus doesn't have to be the one scoring the goals. Using the system, if our striker is pressing and occupying a space, perhaps one or two center backs and the wingers or the 10, who we are putting a lot of faith in and thinking they're looking very good, score the goals, that's fine. So it's not like a tit for tat kind of, this guy's making this much, he's going to make score this many goals. And I was looking at Klaus's, last thing I'll say, I was looking at Klaus's stats. In Finland, he scored a lot, right? In another league, he was like one goal every 3 or 4 games. In Belgium, there was like a problem. There was like team drama, and it was a bad year. In the Netherlands, similar, not a great full season. And then we got him. So it's all over the board. If we get like a Przybylko kind of a production, we'd be very, very happy with that. So yes, he's on DP money, but that's not exactly the thing to look at there.
I mean, look, sometimes strikers, players up top do occupy space or make the runs that free up other areas of the field for the wingers or attacking midfielders to kind of run on into and take the opportunities as well. So if he's setting up those opportunities, or if he's occupying attention from defenders, I mean, that also obviously warrants that DP money or that DP tag, whatever you want to say there. So let's talk about the other attacking pieces, right? You have an Isaac Jensen, you have a Rasmus Alm, and a Thomas Ostruck, who I've try to do my research into. I've watched some highlights and some tape of them, but coming from someone who's obviously covered the team a little bit more, what's your opinion on these three, and obviously mixing in with the rest of the team?
I just want to focus on Thomas Ostruck.
Yeah.
He is like a Czech 10/winger. He came from Cologne, and the man, like he's just like a classic Central European Czech, like works so hard, runs the whole time, but also has that creative side, is very capable of scoring goals and creating assists. And so he can float anywhere. It's been interesting to watch preseason, like where he is in comparison to someone like Vasilev or Joe Keeney. He's not always, and they may all rotate during the game too, which is what happened a lot with the two teams. So he's the one to watch. He's the one where you're like, okay, if he's producing, St. Louis may be just fine, actually. Yeah.
That's I don't know if you have anything you want to say about maybe the two more deeper players on this midfield, and Edward Loven and I'm gonna Blum. I'm not gonna even try the first name. I'm not gonna disrespect the man, but the South African international. If there's anything that you feel like maybe they can bring, obviously in that deeper midfield spot.
Yeah. So Leuven is just a beast of a man, and he's gonna be like box to box /6. But he's also a set piece specialist.
Okay.
Our main chance and goal against Bayer Leverkusen a month ago was his set piece. It hit the post or the crossbar. And so watch for him to be all over the place, putting in good tackles, but also creating a bit. He took the 10 jersey, which was a bit of a surprise, but that's fun. But Jabula Blom is going to be your Tyler Adams of the team. So if you like a guy that's all over the field and puts in tackles left and right, filling in, protecting against the counterattack, he's the guy. And so, he's the one where if someone goes down and it's him, he might be the one I might be most worried about going down. So that's he's going to be a fun one to watch. He's very good.
All right, I have two more players I need to ask you about, and then I will let you go.
Yeah.
Your left back, who obviously we saw play a little bit with St. Louis City 2 last year, and Joachim Nielsen. Let's start with Nielsen because, a little bit of news around him is that he did suffer an injury. He is going to be out for an indefinite period of time. So going back to our conversation before, we might see a lot of Tim Parker and John Bell to start this year, a Kyle Hybert, a Josh Yarrow, two guys who are with St. Louis City 2, probably stepping up into that third or fourth center back role. Nielsen, when he is healthy, though, when he is coming, back, whenever that may be, he to me is a shoe-in starter at the center back position once he gets fully fit and ready to play.
Yeah, he's a Swedish international that would have been probably at the World Cup if Sweden had made it. So he's very high quality. It hurts that he's out, but if it's kind of, we get him midway through the season or in a month or two or three at most, I think it's what it's sounding like. We're going to be fine, and I do think that St. Louis, the 2 team, when we weren't sure what we were doing, they really doubled and tripled down on defense. And so that might be something you see where we really protect our goal as much as possible until things get flowing.
Mm-hmm.
And so doing that with someone like John Bell, Josh Yarrow has the experience. I think obviously Tim Parker is going to be a shoe, and it's just going to be who's his partner, and do we use 2 center backs or 3? It's going to be a fun one to watch. And I do think we'll be okay, but I also think when Nielsen comes in, we'll be more than okay. The guy is a stud.
All right, let's finish up and let's talk quickly about Salmir Pedro. Saw a little bit of him with MLS Next Pro, and I feel like maybe I'm making this up again. I watch a lot of MLS and could talk a lot of players. Did he have an absolute banger of a goal in MLS Next Pro?
Oh yeah, I almost forgot about that. I think it was it ricocheted way off the goal or it bounced out from a defender and just way outside the box. He hammered it in. It was an incredible finish. Maybe the best of the year. Close.
But very young fullback, right? Is it going to be, to me, from what I'm hearing a little bit, and obviously you're closer to the ground with it, a little bit of a competition with him and John Nelson for the starting left back spot, or is one, I guess, favored over the other right now?
If you ask my podcast partner, he hates when I say something like that, because I do think Nelson might be in there as more of a defensive left back. And he's got more experience in MLS. And honestly, Pedro, even in the 2-team season, had some defensive issues. But the quality going forward is unreal. And so that's going to be a give and take situation that you can watch. But, the quality is there. And maybe a fun, quick fact is that he's Bosnian, and the second largest Bosnian population, or the first outside of Bosnia, is in St. Louis. So that was a massive signing to make sure that we have that influence in our roster and in our club flavor in general. So that's a fun one there.
That's a major fun fact. I like that. Well, Phill, plug yourself, plug the podcast, plug Flyover Footy. Please go for it. Give yourself all the time there. Go.
I'm Phill Grooms on Twitter. It's 2 L's, 2 O's is my handle. And Flyover Footy. We've been covering St. Louis soccer since the USL days. So, 2014 or so. And it's really taken off in the last couple of years. It's gotten a much, stronger crew. Everybody's in weekly, and we've got access to the club. I have access to an MLS club, which is something I never thought I'd be saying. So I'm thankful, just plugging away over here, and hopefully you guys can enjoy some content from time to time.
Well, make sure you follow along St. Louis City's first ever season with Flyover Footy, Phill, and everyone over there. Phill, thank you so much, man. I appreciate the time.
Thank you, Tom. Appreciate it.
MLS Aces Podcast. This is your host, Tom Sweezy, and we're back with another team preview heading into the 2023 MLS season. And right now we are talking Nashville SC, one of the more one of the more interesting teams as far as just storylines that surround this team every single year. And I think if you know anything about Nashville SC, especially Nashville on Twitter, then you know the guest that I have talking with me right now, Travis Poole. Travis, thank you so much for coming on and talking a little Nashville with me.
Oh, well, thank you for having me.
Well, let's start off by talking, just kind of what 2022 left us for Nashville SC. 5th in the Western Conference, sitting on 50 points, and a playoff exit that maybe wasn't, I think, as foreseen as maybe people were expecting, right? Especially off an MVP year from Hani Mukhtar and a lot of, I think, last minute things coming out about Gary Smith and a few other players in that first or in the only playoff game against the LA Galaxy. So you guys come off that kind of interesting playoff in and out in one game, and the offseason's been a little rocky, right? You finally get rid of the Ake Loba DP contract, which I'm sure you and many other Nashville SC fans are very happy with. Dave Romney, he does get traded out to New England, which I thought was a wild one, but I guess, it's Jack Meyer's time to shine, and Eric Miller and a few other depth pieces are gone from this Nashville SC roster. Let's just talk about, I guess, kind of some of the changes that have happened so far. It looks like Gary Smith and the Nashville front office has gone very young in their additions and in their signings. What have you made of the Nashville SC kind of additions and subtractions so far this offseason?
So with Ake Loba, he's officially not off the books as far as DP goes. He's only on loan. And their season, because the Mexican League has 2 different seasons, that season, I believe, ends like late April.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll get him back before the summer window. And that's if they don't use the purchase option on him.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe if they don't, we try to sell him in the summer window. Or I don't know, we might be stuck with him. So, but I don't foresee him being in a Nashville shirt for too much longer, though.
Okay.
Dave Romney was a shock to a lot. Not really. Some people predicted it, but most of the fan base was kind of a shock. I'm a Jack Meyer truther, so yeah, he's my guy. He's my guy. So I was like, it's his time to come through. He just turned 23, so super young, and when he got the starts, he made the most of them. So I'm excited to see that. Eric Miller gone. He was a depth piece. He was also a scapegoat for a lot of our blaming. So we'll have to find someone new for that. But the additions, a lot of the additions are going to go to our developmental team in Huntsville for the MLS Next league.
Yeah.
And so a lot of those draft picks, we're drafting a lot of defenders, and people were like, why are we doing this? I'm like, well, we're also filling out another team, so it's not just for Nashville.
Or it's Gary Ball.
Yeah, that's what a lot of people were leaning towards. Like, oh, here comes Gary Ball again. I'm like, yeah, maybe not. But I do like some of the picks. Skinner, he was a left back from Clemson.
Mm-hmm.
He looked pretty solid from all the highlights I can find. But that again, those are highlights. They're not going to post the bad stuff on there. So. I'm looking forward to see what the forward Freeman.
Yep, Tyler Freeman.
Yeah, from Loudoun, and he was previously with SKC, I think.
Mm-hmm. He was in their system. I think he went on loan to 2 Bundesliga team for a little bit too, and I think he played for like their U19s or something like that. So he's been around the globe a little bit.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how he turns out, but there's not been too many additions to come. They're too big of an eye opener for Nashville fans to get super excited about what's coming up.
For sure, right? Like I look at the additions, and honestly, 3 stick out to me. Jacob Schaffelberg will count as an addition. You got him on the from TFC. He was fantastic last year when he came over for you guys on loan. So
love me some Schaffelberg. Yeah,
happy to see him on the squad. Nick DePuy, it kind of seems like to me is gonna be that 3rd center back on the roster. I don't know if maybe you disagree with me on there. It kind of seems
I agree. He seems more like how we Moneyball. So we buy like people who we deem are pretty good but aren't valued as high.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he's just going to back up Zimmerman or Meyer, depending with Zimmerman gets called up or something, or heaven forbid an injury or something happens. So I think he will be that 3rd. But we also got a defender, Lawrence Wyke.
Yeah,
he played with Tampa Bay recently. He also played for Atlanta. He played center back and also CDM. So he's very versatile, and that's what type of players like Mike Jacobs and Gary go for. They get players that can play multiple positions. See Alex Will. He's been playing right back for us in preseason to give Shaq Moore a rest. And so he's probably going to be our backup right back now. So
I did want to ask you a little bit about that, because I'm an MLS nerd, right? I put together starting 11s and depth charts for every MLS team just because That's what I do. Whatever. So, traditionally Gary Smith typically plays in that 4-4-2, right? But I feel like the formation with a lot of the pieces that you guys have on this roster, with the strikers, there are guys like a Schaffelberg or a Fafa Pico, who you guys added, who are technically wingers, right? Randall Leal came into this team as a winger, and now he's been kind of playing in a different adjusted role. What do you feel like tactically we're going to see from maybe some of these new additions coming into Gary Smith's squad?
So before we got a pure right back in Shaq Moore, we had Eric Miller and Alex Will in rotation. And Gary had to compensate for the lack of just, I'll say, a good right back. So we ran a 3-5-2, or if you want to call it a 5-3-2, because we sit so deep.
Yeah.
You would have a 3 center back set pairing with Meyer, Romney, Zimmerman, and then Alex Wheel is the right wing back and Lovitz is the left wing back. And then your midfield would be, I think we ran out versus the first game of the season against Seattle. It was literally Godoy, McCarty, and Davis. Pretty stout midfield. But when Shaq came, we did like 8 straight games of a 4-4-2. Lovitz, Romney, Zimmerman, Shaq in the back for him. And then Davis and McCarty in the midfield with Schaffelberg on left mid and Leal right mid. And then the 2 forwards were Hani and CJ. And I mean, I think we'll do that again just because we have Shaq now for a full season, because he came in the summer window as well as Schaffelberg. I think we'll stay with the back 4-4-2, which, we didn't do that against the Galaxy. We went back to our 5 at the back, and Gary was also sick that game. So I don't know if it was a trust issue of him not being there. He didn't trust to do that. I don't know what the reasoning was. And also Schaffelberg didn't start, and so that threw us all off. But I think when you roll out the best possible 11, you go 4-4-2. And I've been told it's going to be a battle between Fafa and Schaffelberg for that left mid position.
I mean, that's kind of what I'm seeing, right? When I look at this 11, I have Fafa as my starting left midfielder, whatever you want to consider it, right? And again, maybe tactics do change. Maybe things adapt in the run of a game where you do maybe morph that 4-4-2 into a little bit of a 3-5-2 mid-game or whatever might tactically fit for the opponent, right? So things are always changing there. But Fafa does add a little bit of MLS experience to a lot of the youngsters that there are going to be around. So I was excited about that pickup as well. I think one guy we would be, it would be a shame not to talk about more is Hani Mukhtar, right? Last season. I think in my vote and many other people's votes out there, the best player in Major League Soccer. You don't see a season that Hani had in 2022 very often, right? Like you think of maybe like the Josef Martinez season from a few years ago, a Carlos Vela season from a few years ago. Is it all kind of, again, offensively on Hani's back for 2023, or do you feel like maybe we see some step ups from other guys around?
Well, it's really hard because CJ fell off hard last season. He hadn't contributed to a goal in like up until recently. Actually, in a preseason game, he scored against the US U20s. So it's like, okay, cool. But he went like 6 months, it felt like, without touching the back of the net. But you look at the season beforehand when Leal was fully fit, it was Leal, Hani, and CJ, and they lit up like the Eastern Conference. They top 3. CJ was contributing to goals nonstop, and then he just fell off hard for some reason. So, I mean, if the trend continues, it looks like, Hani's going to be carrying the load of the offense. But if CJ can somehow find his 2021 form, it's going to look a lot better. But CJ is getting older. He's like 34 now. And usually when soccer players get older, they don't get typically better than when you're younger. So
exactly, you start losing the legs from underneath you a little bit. I mean, look, maybe I put the pressure less on CJ. I put it more on Randall to get back to the form we saw 2 years ago. Because I think if you can bring in a guy like Liao or you start a guy like Liao who, I think when he came to Nashville, people were like, damn, like this is one of the better younger players in CONCACAF. Like you bring him in and he can contribute to Hani offensively or can contribute with Hani offensively. I really feel like that's the guy that I'm circling that like could be the make or break player for Nashville SC in 2023.
I completely agree. I love Randall Liao. He facilitates a lot of the offensive movements going forward rather than just hoofing it deep for Hani or CJ. They look to give the ball to Liao, and he'll drive the ball forward and play that ball to them. The issue with Liao is almost the same one with Godoy this past season. They were both injured. Godoy was hurt majority of the season. Liao got hurt the RSL game at home for Nashville and then missed the extended run. If he can stay healthy, he may have gotten hurt the season before too for a little bit, but if he could stay healthy, I see the load being lifted a little bit off Hani's shoulders. But it's all about. I think that's what scares Nashville fans the most right now is who can stay healthy. Godoy has spent more time injured than he has on the field for Nashville in these past 3 seasons, and it's infuriating because when he's on the field, he's good, and so it's something we're looking at. Like we look at Liao, like he can be that guy. It's all a matter about keeping him on the field as long as possible. So I think that will definitely help Hani out, and who knows. Maybe we'll do better than just make it to the first round of the playoffs instead of getting knocked out.
No, exactly, right? And look, when Godoy and Liao, they're fully fit, they're fully healthy in your starting lineup, it only makes you guys better. It only makes you guys more and more dangerous because you're helping out everyone else on the team. The last player that I really want to kind of give a little highlight to is obviously someone we mentioned before, but Walker Zimmerman. Arguably the best defender in Major League Soccer. The guy's won the Defensive Player of the Year award a ton of times at this point. MLS Best 11 defender, USMNT player, played in the World Cup, all this fun stuff, right? Like he is arguably outside of Hani your most important player. I'm sure some people would argue it the other way around, but I'll let that kind of go to the Nashville SC fans more. But Walker Zimmerman, what do you think another year of him kind of just captaining, leading that back line looks like for you guys?
I think it brings just a sense of leadership to the team. McCarty, I don't see Dax McCarty starting many games. I think with a fit Godoy, and then you have Sean Davis. Those two are going to be our starters just because Dax is pushing, 36? He's getting up there, and his legs probably won't keep churning the way he used to. So the captain, when McCarty's not on the field, has always been Zimmerman.
Yeah.
And so I think that veteran leadership coming in, he'll be 30 this coming year, I think. So he's still not old, but still not young, but he's right in that sweet spot where you can still use him a lot. And I think him and having Jack Meyer next to him is going to be something to watch. Jack's super young. He's 23. He can learn a lot from Zimmerman. And Meyer has shown really good signs of being that next guy for us. And I think that's why the club moved on from Romney as well. I'm looking forward to see what Zimmerman can do. Hopefully he elevates his game a little bit with Berhalter forcing him to play out of the back. Because Gary doesn't do that. Gary looks to hoof that ball upfield. So maybe he picked up a couple new tricks having been with the men's national team for a little bit now. So I'm interested to see what happens with him and how he progresses. Hopefully he doesn't regress.
Exactly. Look, for me at this point, Nashville SC, I think it's going to be a very interesting kind of transition make or break year for them. I think if things go well, they'll continue to go well, but I can see if things maybe don't go as well in 2023, maybe they take a step back and try to go a little bit younger, but we'll see. It's going to be a fun season, maybe a lot of minutes on all these guys' legs between Open Cup, Leagues Cup, MLS regular season, and just more and more competition that's being added to it. Hoping for maybe a summer transfer of Ake Loba and you bring in another DP striker to pair next time. That would be
we're definitely hoping for something because we're getting restless over here, seeing everyone else in the Eastern Conference make moves with Orlando just doing a mass overhaul. It looks like Charlotte's bringing in players. Of course, Atlanta's always linked to someone. Then Miami's, bringing in Joseph Martinez. I'm like, okay, that's a pretty big get. So I'm eager to see what we do. It just looks like we're kind of just twiddling our thumbs, but in the past, we've always looked like we waited for the summer window anyways. So we'll see what happens by the time that comes. But I think depth is going to be a key thing for Nashville in the season with, like you said, the Open Cup, Leagues Cup, MLS season, and just everything, all these different competitions. You're going to have depth to succeed or you got to prioritize one of those things,
Exactly.
But it's going to be something to watch for, especially with Nashville, with the I feel like there's a lack of quality and depth at some positions. So,
well, I can definitely agree with you there. But Travis, we got to leave it here. Travis Poole, guys, thank you so much, Travis, for coming on, talking a little Nashville, and good luck with Gary Ball in 2023.
No, thank you. I appreciate you having me on.